Hi, everyone. I am Luann Dunsford with the Michigan Works Association. I thank you so much for joining our conference and certainly joining this session. The new normal for hourly hiring is going to be something that we're going to be very interested in, very relevant for our system. Uh, on behalf of the staff and all of the sponsors, we just thank you. I do want to give a big shout of thanks to CVS Health for sponsoring today's workshop session. CVS has been a staunch supporter of Michigan Works and the Michigan Works system and the annual conference for years, so thank you to them. Our sponsors help make this conference happen. We appreciate their support, and along with our sponsors, certainly it's the exhibitors who come in and share their time. So I encourage you to stop by the expo just to say hello to them, see who's there, give them names, numbers you can follow up later, or have a conversation right now. So before we get going, we had a few housekeeping items. Tim, do you prefer to have questions throughout the whole session, or do you want to have the Q&A at the end?
Well, I'll definitely have time at the end, and if I can get them during, if it makes sense. I got the two screen things going, so my presentation's here, camera's here, but then I see all the questions over here. So if I take my eyes off of you guys, just know what's going on.
Okay, so you could. Okay, so we'll just let you roll with it, and then we'll go from there. So, we're eager for your feedback. I'm going to be putting in a survey link in the side, so please be free to follow that. And then I'm going to turn it over right now. Tim Sackett, President and CEO with HRU Technical Resources. Tim, thank you.
Thanks, Luann. Hi, everybody. Welcome. So it's 1 o'clock on a Monday. It's, you know, in COVID, you might want to say, do we know it's Monday? Do we not know it's Monday? It's one of those crazy times. I'm going to talk today about hiring. And I can tell you right away, as soon as we all sat down at the beginning of this year, no one expected our hiring would be what it is right now. So I'm pretty excited to kind of go through some of the stuff that we've learned, some of the stuff that we'll get better at, and some of the stuff that we don't know yet. Real quick, Luann kind of introduced me. I run HRU Tech here in Lansing. It's a recruiting sourcing firm. We do mostly like IT engineering stuff. But I also wrote a book. I'm the author of The Talent Fix, and it's actually a SHRM published book. And that's all about talent acquisition, talent attraction, recruitment marketing. So if you want to learn more about that, a little bit more in detail, that's available on Amazon. You can go find it over there. I'm a blogger. I started blogging about 10 years ago, actually a little over 10 years ago, at a site that was a multi-contributor site called Fistful of Talent. So there's talent acquisition, recruiting HR people from around the country that kind of right there. So and that started there and found out that, you know, I kind of have a knack for writing. And so started my own site, timsackett.com, called the Tim Sackett Project, where a buddy of mine kind of challenged me to go out and try to write about our industry every single day. And he goes, let's do it for a year. He was already doing it. And that was 9 years ago. So I've been writing every single day for 9 years. And that's another challenge all on its own. But it really all about talent execution, HR execution, leadership, really anything I could think about. At the beginning of this year in January, I accepted a position to work with the Josh Burson Academy. For those who are in the HR space, you probably heard of Josh. He's kind of the preeminent, you know, kind of thought leader in the space. So I'm a senior faculty member at his academy. And then I always tell people I'm a father to a Hall of Fame wife, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's so cute that you love your wife that much. I'm like, no, she's really in the Hall of Fame. She played volleyball at the University of Wyoming, and they did really great, and she was really great, and she made the Hall of Fame. But she's also a great wife. And then 3 sons, 2 of which just graduated college, which is a whole unique experience by itself, having them graduate during a pandemic and trying to find a job. And then Scout Bear William Sackett is the little guy there I'm holding. He's my Labradoodle, my mini Labradoodle. And so don't really go anywhere without him if I can. So, and he's usually here in my office, but I don't have him today because he would probably start whining. I want to know why I'm talking to you guys and not him. All right. So the new normal, you know, one of the things, like I think I mentioned right away, was We never expected to do what we're doing now back in January, back in November, October, when we were building our budgets, building our plans for this year, especially around hiring. We expected that we would have a really, really hard time finding candidates for jobs. And some of us still, depending on our skill sets, still might be in that position. But for a lot of us, we expected that we'd have a hard time finding talent because we had ultra low unemployment, like historic low unemployment, like bottom of the barrel. We can't find anybody that will actually work anymore. Unemployment. It was to the point where, we were really trying to figure out a lot of technology that would help us be more efficient, do more work, because we just didn't have enough bodies to do what we needed. But now we have something completely different. One of the issues that we face, and we always it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Right now, if you think about, you posted a job that was semi-skilled, low-skilled, you have so many people applying that it's like finding a needle in a stack of needles, right? It's a little bit different than finding a needle in a haystack. I can find a needle in a haystack. It'll take me a long time, but I can actually do it. But how do I find a needle in a stack of needles when I'm trying to find the specific needle and they all look the same? That's kind of the new normal that we're going to run into probably for the next 18 to 36 months. If we just take a look at where kind of everything is going from an economic standpoint. And one of the things and I posted this on Twitter back in July, and I said I just completed our company culture statement, and basically what it boiled down to was, does your crazy match our crazy? Are you like us? Because that's really what we're trying to find. And I tell people all the time, we always think that we're like, if you talk to a CEO or a leader or an executive director of an association or a government or whatever those roles are that you have, think of that high leader level. They always believe that they're hiring the most talented people. Well, Tim, we only hire the most talented people. Not really, right? We don't really. It's kind of a lie. It's kind of a lie that we tell ourselves because it makes us feel good. What we usually end up hiring is the most talented person available that actually applied to the job at the time that we have it open. And even then, what we're trying to really do, though, is to say, wait a minute, it's not just about the skills. Of course, I need somebody that can do the skills, but then it's also about how do we find that person that actually can live with us, right? That can get along with us, that is going to stay around, that their crazy matches our crazy. How do we find that person that also has the skills? That becomes one of the bigger challenges, and it's going to be even more difficult. So we keep thinking, there's a part of us that goes, well, wait a minute, having more candidates is going to make it easier for us, because we know for the last decade what it was like not having enough candidates or not being able to get anybody to apply to our jobs, or everybody who applied didn't even have close to the skills that we needed. So now it's going to be so much easier. Not really. It's not, because when you have tons and tons and tons of candidates, even though a lot of them might have the skills you need, it really still, because here's the problem, right, is that in really more difficult economic times, we're going to run leaner, right? We're not going to be able to add the headcount like we did when we have better economic times. And whether you're in a public sector or in a private sector, better economic times means more money for everybody, right? Better economic times means more revenue for private companies. It means more tax dollars for public companies. As things contract, everybody, has less money, thus less positions. So in less economic times, we run leaner. That means every single person we hire is more critical to what we do because we need more out of them. So that's what this is, right? One of the issues that we see is it's easy to write the job description. Well, we think it's easy to write the job description. We hope that our hiring managers help us write these job descriptions. Mostly it's us trying to write them from an HR or talent perspective. But what we really need to find out, though, is what is that? When that person that's trying to hire says, what does that perfect match mean? We really have to define that. And so it has to be much more than just the skill set. Now, if you think about how difficult it is to actually have an inclusive, diverse environment as well, this is where we run into problems, because most people, when they think about the perfect match, they tend to hire people like themselves. If I had a position open, right? And I found 3 candidates that all had similar skills in education, no real difference about what their backgrounds are. And one was a white male, similar age to me. One was a young Black female, and one was an old Asian male, let's say. I would go and interview them all. They would all interview well because they all have the skills needed to do the job. At the end, I would go, gosh, that white dude, there was something about him that I really connected with. I think they're the best candidate. They're going to be the best fit because they're more of what I'm trying to surround myself with. Now, again, understand we all have a tendency and a bias to do this. If I was a Black female, I'm more likely to hire another Black female because we speak the same language or we have similar experiences or whatever that might be. If I'm an Asian male, I'm more likely to hire an Asian male. We all have that same internal bias unless we really work hard to shut it down. And so that becomes the difficult thing that we run into right now when we start saying, wait a minute, okay, so Tim's saying it's more critical than ever to have a great cultural fit. It's also more critical than ever to have all the skills. At the same time, we want to be inclusive. How do we do all of this? Oh, by the way, we're remote, so we can't necessarily see people face to face like we usually can. It's more difficult. It's going to be more difficult to make those great hires and be inclusive. And I think we run into this, right? The real question is how do we hire the right person who matches the skills for the position, has the right experience, fits our culture, is completely inclusive, will fall in love with our brand or whoever we are, is highly productive. They're not an asshole. They'll accept our average pay and our benefits. And they want to live and work in the location that we actually have a need for them. And they're all willing to do this, and we can do this for virtually no increase in cost, right? Because that's what you're being told in your budgets is like, hey, still hire great people. By the way, you can't increase cost. In fact, you might have to decrease cost. This is the problem that we run into with the new normal and hourly hiring and the new normal and hiring across the board is that it becomes more and more difficult. So I'm going to tell you right now, technology is your friend. We have to embrace technology. What I find is that a lot of people in our sector, whether you're in talent, HR, even a hiring manager that has to hire, we tend to shy away from the technology we have and go, well, really, it's not that difficult. All I need is an application or a resume. I need to set up an interview, phone screen, whatever, and I can make this happen. The reality is we can do this a lot better if we use technology. We can hire better, hire more efficiently. And so we're going to talk a lot about that today. When we think about, to me, the 3 fastest ways that you can improve what you do when it comes to talent and hiring, first is become a super user of the stack that you have. Before you buy or change anything, I will constantly talk with leaders and they'll go, Tim, it's our technology. Our technology sucks. It's broken. Our people don't use it, whatever it might be. And then, we'll start to dig into, well, what is the technology they actually have? And one of the issues that I constantly run into is like, the technology you have isn't that bad. It might be on par with a lot of the other people who are trying to do the same thing you're trying to do, but you're not using it the way you could. And they're like, yeah, that's the problem. We only use 25% of the technology we have. Okay, that's not a technology problem. That's a you problem, right? That's a you as a leader aren't making sure that your team and yourself are using the technology to its fullest capabilities. So I always tell people, first become a super user of your stack. When I say a stack, it's basically all the technology you use to do your job. Could be the actual hardware, like your laptop, your desktop, but it's all the software you use. If you think about, I use email and I use this proprietary software and I use an applicant tracking system and I use whatever, all of those pieces of technology that you use as your complete stack. And usually you have a core system that you use to do your hiring. And so we really push people to go out there and say, hey, how do I become a super user? So first, right, you have to understand what are using the technology that we already have, not going out and buying new stuff first, but using what we have, who uses it the best? And usually you have to go back through and talk to your vendor and find out. They're like, oh my gosh, yeah, we have this organization over here is using it better than anybody ever. We didn't even know, we didn't foresee that people would even use it like this, and they're great. And then create some friends with them. have some conversations, figure out how do we do it exactly the same way that they do it, or how do we get to that level, or at least start to work towards that, because that's going to get you faster improvement than anything. Now, two, I say find friends with marketing. In a public sector, maybe not a lot of marketing folks out there to lean on, because great hiring, great talent attraction is about great marketing. You can't just go, well, we're the state, or we're a county, or we're a city, or we're whatever, and people are just going to want to come work here, and we're going to get the best talent. Well, you'll get people that want to come work there, but you might not get the best talent. Best talent comes because you actually market. I was had a conversation about a month ago with a public entity. I won't give out the name of who it was, but they're in charge of accounting and finance and all of this stuff, and they have to hire accountants. And they're just like, there's a challenge, right? Because we can't just go and say, oh, I need accountants, or I need certified public accountants to come work in our organization on a career site, and it just happens. People they're not going to find that. Everybody and their brother, every private, public accounting firm and every company is looking for the same kind of people, and they can, pay more. But, we have all these other advantages that these other companies don't have. And again, there was no way for them to go out and market. So we definitely have to figure out, how do we market directly to those individuals that we're trying to attract? And then three, I'll say one of the great ways to find this is to find a safe tribe online that you educate yourself for free. Now, for those of us that are in that kind of Gen X, boomer, maybe older millennial, that are still comfortable going on Facebook, and I say that because I have 3 Gen Z sons that would drop dead if they had to go on Facebook. They won't do that. But we used to think that LinkedIn was a great way to get groups together of like-minded people, professionals, and actually have great conversations. It turns out that hasn't really worked. Now, I know LinkedIn continues to work on how do we make our groups more active. I will tell you, if you truly want to increase like how good you are at hiring, at talent attraction, at recruitment marketing, or any of these things, Facebook groups has just phenomenal interaction. Like, I belong to probably 10 different Facebook groups directly around recruitment, talent attraction, recruiting technology. In the biggest, the most thoughtful minds in that area from around the world are in these groups talking every single day, and you can post a question, and it's amazing some of the information that you'll actually get from these individuals. So push yourself out there to really go out and find kind of that online environment where you can educate yourself, and you don't have to necessarily engage right away. You can just join the group. You can kind of lurk, you can kind of read stuff, but then eventually if you want to ask a question or if you want to share, the people there are just great to work with, especially in the professional groups. I don't know on other groups, I'm not going to answer any of that stuff, but on the professional side, I just have great success sharing information and getting my questions answered in just some of the most professional way. So for me, if we talk about virtual recruiting, virtual talent attraction, here's kind of the virtual recruiting stack that I would recommend. One is a career site chatbot. And why is this important? If you think about now from a retail standpoint, when you go online to buy something, almost every single site you go to, a Nordstrom's, a Macy's, any place like that, is when you start searching, eventually, you have a question or something's going to pop up. You have these little chat windows that pop up, right? And for the most part, these are all chatbots. They're not real people. They might look like real people. In fact, the recruiting chatbots now are so real, it's hard to tell that they're not. But what we know from data, because we can measure, I can go to a career site of an organization, and I know every single person that goes in, even if they never even apply to a job, that they came because we can measure the IP address coming in. We know that a career site that has a chatbot versus one that doesn't have a chatbot, the one that does will get a 47% more applicants to apply. Because a lot of times people are coming there and they're like, okay, I'm looking at this job. Oh, says I have to have red hair. I don't have red hair. And they just go away, right? But if you had a chatbot, it might come up and go, hey, I see you're interested in this job. And they're like, yeah, but it says I have red hair and I don't have red hair, I have strawberry blonde hair. And they'll go, oh, that's fine. You can have strawberry blonde hair and still apply. And they're like, oh my gosh, okay, I'll apply. Or they might just go, oh, it says I have to be open to all shifts, but I have kids that I have to get off to school in the morning, and really I'm looking for second shift. So all I want is a second shift job. And boom, they'd say, oh gosh, yeah, apply. Here's where you would say, I only want second shift, but we still want you to apply. I mean, it's amazing when you have a third party or someone outside your organization read your job descriptions, some things that we put in there that we just read right through that we never realize are keeping people from applying. And so a career site chatbot does great. Now, your ATS, your applicant tracking system, that's kind of your core foundational system for hiring. It definitely has to be a part of that. I will tell you, modern applicant tracking systems have a lot of CRM or recruiting automation capability. Now, a CRM is basically it's a marketing software built around applicant tracking systems. If you think, and it's been going on for a couple of decades now on the retail side. So like, I love shoes. I always make fun with my friends saying I have the shoe flu. But if you go out and I'm on Nordstrom's, let's say, and I'm looking at a pair of shoes and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't get shoes, or Miss Kim will kill me if I have another box of shoes come home. Not going to happen. And so then I go and I'm reading CNN, or I'm going to ESPN.com or whatever. And then the ad just keeps showing up, right? Oh gosh, there's those shoes. And it wears me down and I get the shoes. That's what CRM does. But if you think about it from a job standpoint, what it can do is you go onto a site and you're looking at the job and you're like, oh gosh, I like that job. I'm not sure. And then I go over to Facebook, right? I'm going to leave that career site. I'm going to Facebook. Boom. All of a sudden that job comes up. I'm like it's almost like it's following you around, because here's what happens is we all leave basically social exhaust as we're searching on the internet. And all of that exhaust can be followed by this technology. It's a little Big Brotherish, but it actually works really well to retarget to candidates about what we have open and what we have available. If you think about the sites like Indeed and ZipRecruiter, back in the day, Monster.com, Career Builder, all of those sites were kind of built around this kind of technology to be able to retarget to candidates that left without applying. It's really important. Communication tools. So right now, the most of what we do is we communicate through email. But as you take a look at younger millennials, Gen Z, most of them won't ever look at email. I make the joke that if I could send all three of my sons an email that says, hey, the first one to respond gets $20,000 dollars if it's within 24 hours, and I would never pay that out because they won't check email. But if I texted them, or I message them on IG or send them a message on Snap or something like that, and then or a TikTok for I have TikTok, but they said I don't actually send messages on it. Anyways, we have to communicate with people the way they want to be communicated, not the way we want to communicate, if we really want to get the best talent and attract. Online screening, interviewing, I'm going to talk about all this stuff, virtual onboarding. Let's get into some of the specifics of this. Now, I have a poll question. You guys can just do it in the chat because I didn't set it up officially as a poll question. But really wanted to get down to, what is the one thing keeping you from hiring, from being great at hiring, right? Is it finding more talent? Is it finding the right talent? Selecting the right talent? So you're like, wait a minute, what are the difference of all those? Finding more talent is literally just top of funnel. How do we get more people to apply this job? We don't have enough. Finding the right talent is, how do we actually get the right talent to apply to the job, just not anybody. Selecting the right talent then gets back down to, we found some great people to apply. Now, how do we make sure we get the right one? Keeping our top talent. I know publicly, it's just so difficult to compete sometimes with some of the private stuff. And then I don't even know what great talent looks like. So let's do this. We have selecting right talent, acquiring a funnel of talent, finding more talent, all of those things that are in there. So we're going to talk about different ways that help on all of this. I will tell you, back in January, coming into this, it would have been just 90% of the people would have said, Tim, we just find more talent, find more people to apply, give me a better funnel. And then, depending on the positions, if it's low skill, no skill positions, finding the right talent then becomes sometimes the more difficult piece of that, because we can find people to apply, they just don't fit very well. So let's talk about career sites and chatbots. No one visits your career site by accident. And whether you're public or private, it doesn't matter. No one just automatically just randomly finds your career site, but we think they do. And we spend so much time and money and resources on a career site. And I always tell people having a career site is like having a billboard, but instead of putting it on a highway or a really high traffic area, you stick it behind your building where nobody can see it. That's very similar to a career site, right? No one really knows. I mean, everyone kind of assumes you have a career site, and if you make 3 clicks, I can probably find it and get there. But no one is going there on purpose unless they actually know for sure they want to work for you. And then we assume a lot of people do, but all of a sudden, if you step back and really take a look at the environment that you're in, I'm in Lansing, Michigan. There is 5,000 companies in Lansing, Michigan that have career sites that are looking for people. If you're in Detroit, there's probably 1 million companies that have career sites that are looking for people. And now everyone's going to have different jobs and things, but that's when we get back to you have to really go out and market. You have to tell people to come to your career site and look at those jobs, apply to those jobs. And one of the ways we do that is through a lot of these kind of career site chatbots technologies. All of these logos are out there are great companies that do this really well. We only capture about 1/3 of the potential applicants who come to your career site. So if you think on a daily basis, 10 people will come and look at your career site, only 3 or 4 of those people will actually apply to a job or even give us any information, maybe apply to a talent funnel that we have or something like that. 2/3 will go away. And they might come back and lurk. They might never apply. They might never come back. But again, if we have a chatbot, we can capture way, way, way more than that. We definitely have to go out and market beyond our career site. So we have to go out there to make sure that our jobs are being scraped to Google Jobs, to Indeed. We might pay a little bit of money and make sure they're out there on some programmatic engine that's out there, like a ZipRecruiter or someone that's actually getting those jobs out there. If we're really struggling, if I'm in, the middle of nowhere county government in northern Michigan, and I can't get anybody to apply to a job, maybe I have to do some pay-per-click stuff with Facebook or Instagram or something like that. It's worth testing some of these things out. They're pretty low cost overall. But the career site chatbot stuff is just kind of bare bones. This is where we should be. And, we say, well, wait a minute, our system doesn't have one of those. All of these can integrate and go with what you have. And many times what they're doing also is they're going into your database of candidates. Like an Alio is a good example. Let's say over a course of 3 years, you had X position, whatever X might be, and you had 1,000 people that applied for X. Over time, you hired maybe a couple of handfuls of those people, but you had 950 that never got hired. Now, there might be some reasons you didn't hire them. Maybe they suck. Maybe they didn't fit the position. But there's always a good chance that there's a ton of them that actually fit really well, but the timing didn't work out, right? Like I see this constantly where we say, like somebody will go through a process and they'll have 50 people that'll apply to a job, and they'll start to go through and screen and interview and get, they're basically 9.5 months pregnant with a hire. And then boom, that day, that afternoon, the best person applies. And they're like, the hiring manager's like, no, I don't want to look at anybody else. We have this, we made the offer, they accepted. And you're like, okay. 6 months later, same job comes open. What do? We go right back and we start the machine again, and we go out and post, and we go out and market, and we go out and try to find the person. And we forgot about that one 6 months ago. The technology does it. They'll go out, they'll match them. They'll say, oh my gosh, this person's perfect. Let's reach out to them automatically and see if they're still interested. If you think about every single person who actually has applied to your jobs, what they're saying is, I love you. I want to come work for you. Please accept me. And so it behooves us to go out there and make sure that we're back out reaching to those individuals that already love us, that said they want to come work for us, even if it's 6 months, a year, 24 months, 36 months later. We see this in technology all the time. Somebody will apply right out of college and they have a computer science degree, but with very little experience. And the manager will go, I can't have an entry level right now. I need someone with 3 years experience. 3 years later, that person has 3 years experience somewhere. They just haven't applied to our job. What if we reached out? And they're like, oh my gosh, this is in the same city I grew up and I want to come back and I've been working 800 miles away and this is awesome. But we never tell them that, and they might already have a job. They're not really looking, and that stuff kind of happens. So my ATS says it's also CRM. So we talked a little bit about ATSs and CRMs. ATS is your core kind of applicant tracking system. CRM is marketing. But what I find is that most applicant tracking systems will say they have CRM, but it's not really candidate relationship marketing. It's really just kind of light mass email, mail merge, not CRM. CRM sounds like complicated and expensive. It's not really that. It is about being able to nurture candidates. So if you think about, if you want to, I mean, we always talk about a leader will come and say, oh, you should have a pipeline of candidates for me, right? How do we get a pipeline of candidates coming? Well, you do that through CRM and through nurturing, right? You take a group of 10, 100, 1,000, same kind of candidates that you might not be ready to hire this moment, but you keep them warm through content that you're sending them, things that you're offering them, kind of calls to action. And you do this, or the system does this in a really natural way, where depending on how people interact with it, they'll send them a different piece of content, or they'll reach back out to them and said, hey, you didn't respond to this. Did you see this? It's the way that we actually nurture the people. It's the way that we buy, that companies get us to buy things, right? They continue to follow us around. They continue to send us an email. How many times have you gotten email from the same company, and by the sixth one, you're like, oh, all right, I'm going to click on it. I'm going to look, and like, oh my gosh, I really like that. I'm going to go buy. This is what we're trying to do with talent as well. We're trying to get them to buy from us. Now, I talked a little bit about recruiting and communication tools. And really it was, hey, we tend to fall in love with email way too much. And I always make this comment, and I don't mean to sound vicious about it, but I think if you have recruiters, or you're an HR person, or you're a hiring manager trying to hire talent, and you refuse to use text messaging to communicate with a candidate, you should be fired. And they're just like, people are taken aback by that. They're like, what do you mean? If you aren't willing to communicate with a candidate in a way that they're most comfortable, and you're just doing it the way you're comfortable, you are always going to lose out on the best talent. Now, text messaging is an easy one, because what we know is only about 7 to 11% of like emails are even opened. So if you're just emailing and you're assuming people are going to open it, you're wrong. Now, I could actually, everybody that's on this, I could say, hey, I'm going to send you a text message right now. And 98% or more are going to actually see that. They're going to have their phone right here, and they're going to go, oh, Tim just sent me the message. And, you're probably going to open it. So we know text messaging definitely gets people and gets it in front of their eyes, right? Phone calls, another way, right? We know, again, younger audiences tend not to want to pick up a phone call. But if you leave a voicemail, they might listen to it. My team tends to do like what we call a triple threat. They will actually email, text message, phone call the candidate all at the same time. So they'll email them, right? All the information you normally would. Hey, here's a position. Here's, want to see if you're interested. They'll actually send them a voicemail, because rarely does anybody actually pick up. And then they'll go, they'll, basically the voice message is, hey, I just sent you an email. You click on it, take a look at the job description, let me know if you're interested. And then they'll send a text message that says the same thing. Hey, sent you an email. I was the person that just called, left a voicemail. We have a position, wanted to see if you're interested. We get about a 67 response rate right away. Now, even with that, there's a kind of a law of communication that happens where people don't respond to like one outreach, and they won't respond to two outreaches. In fact, Herbert True, who's a Notre Dame professor, found that it took on average about 6 outreaches to get about 66% of people to actually reach out. What we find is that in most kind of public and private environments in HR and talent acquisition, is that most recruiters or most hiring managers will give up after 2 or 3 times. Most of the time it's twice, right? They'll say, well, I emailed them, they didn't respond. I emailed them again, they didn't respond. They must not be interested. My own team will go 9 times. Now, what happens is that eventually we'll get probably, I mean, we're getting around 91% actual response. Now, some of those responses are, hey, psychos, stop stalking me. I'm not interested. But we'll get a lot of people that will respond on the 5th or 6th or 7th time that will go, oh my gosh, thank you for continuing to try to reach out. I was on vacation and then I had this project and I was just underwater for 2 weeks. I am interested. I do want to talk to you about this. Please, right? Let's figure this out. So externally, we have to figure out what's the best way to reach candidates. And there's never going to be one way. But how do we integrate multiple ways of communication and make sure that we're getting the vast majority, right? And then internally, we have to do the same thing. If we're not getting a great back and forth with our hiring managers, how do we make sure that we're getting that? Because that's super important that we get really quick feedback from them so that we can go back and forth and make sure that we're not losing out on great talent. And so we have to be careful about that, right? Make sure that we're not going out there. Now, a lot of you might go, wait a minute, Tim, like, how do I we don't have texting in our applicant tracking system or in our things. Like, how do we do this? There's a lot of really inexpensive ways to do that. And again, some of that you might have to work through with your IT teams or your risk teams to understand, like, hey, what are we willing to do, not do? I will tell you that there's a couple of ways that are fairly risk adverse, right? One is you can get a Google Voice account for free. And actually, when you send somebody a text message through Google Voice, the response comes back through email so that you can actually capture all of that, right? Now, it's in Gmail, so you're going to have some forwarding set up or something like that if you want to capture that within your work product, but you can make it happen. Or you can go out to like a Walmart or a Target or any place like that, and you can just go get a burner phone, cell phone, smartphone, and have that as your texting number. So like on your career site or on your job descriptions or in your marketing that you say, oh, hey, text hire me now to this number, that number is going to be your department burner phone that's only used for communicating back and forth with candidates. Works really well. It's super inexpensive to do. And we find that, a lot of people, if they can't go out and actually get real technology from a texting standpoint for recruiting, that does really well. Now, virtual screening and interviewing is another one that I think if you think about working at home or working remotely and how difficult it is to actually screen an interview, there's a lot of these technologies that are built. Now, I will tell you, some of these are expensive. Some of them aren't that expensive. IT Filtered is a great one for that. You can, they will actually, it's crazy to me how the technology will actually watch people as they're working. Filter does it even on camera. So the person's on camera. I know the state of Michigan for IT had a problem where they would say, oh, we're going to send you an IT test, right? We're going to send you a developer test. And the person would take it, but it wasn't the person, right? They would have their buddy take it, or they'd have somebody else take it who would pass it. Then they would hire them. And all of a sudden you have this really kind of poor performer, or just a person that wasn't the person you thought it was. Filtered is a technology that will actually watch so that there's no switch. And if something happens where the person's eye contact or something happens, all of a sudden red flags pop up and they'll say, hey, this was probably, not the right person. Or if they won't allow them to actually copy and paste, because that's another thing, right? Where they're like, oh, they can just go on a developer site and copy the right answer and then paste it in. It won't allow stuff like that to happen. So the technology's gotten very sophisticated to make sure people are doing the actual work around that. Pymetrics is one where it's gamification and it's very fast. That's another issue we have we want people to screen and we'll say, oh, we're going to send you this test, right? And it only takes 30 minutes. If you're like hiring for low or no skill jobs, there's no way someone's going to do that. And if you're the person going, well, if they won't do that, then they must not want a job here. You're completely dead wrong. And like, the person that won't that won't text a candidate, maybe you should be fired as well. I have 3 really good like boys that, 2 of them just got graduated from college and they're good students but there's things that they'll do and not do based on their age, right? Would they go fill out a paper application in a company? Nope. But if you had a sign out front that said, text me this, and they're going to go through with the chat bot and they're going to fill out an application. They would do that 10 out of 10 times before they would walk into an organization and actually do a paper copy of the application. So again, we have to figure out how do we engage all these different audiences to make sure we have an inclusive kind of talent pool. A lot of the video interview stuff, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit, is great. I love the video interview stuff. It doesn't have to be on Slack or Zoom or Skype. There's actual systems, right? Spark Hire is a very inexpensive one. HireVue is more expensive, but they have so much more technology built in to tell you why is one better than the other. All of these are great ones to go out there and actually kind of to demo and take a look at. And all these companies would love to demo right now since not a lot of people are buying. So I would really go out and make sure you do that. So here's one of the things I'll say. If you're one of the organizations that are doing, like you just ramped up virtual interviewing right away, and you're like, nope, Tim, we're using Zoom or we're using Skype or whatever, and we're doing virtual interviews. I wouldn't even say before, because you're already doing it. We all are doing it. If you haven't taken one of these interviews yourself and your hiring managers haven't taken one of these interviews yourself, force yourself and force them to go do this, because I think a lot of candidates are being missed based on the difficulty of what it is to do an actual video virtual interview, especially the ones who are timed. A lot of the ones, some of these ones that I put on here, like Spark Hire and HireVue and Spark and Harquin, they will do it where the question comes up, right? It'll say, tell us about a time when blah, 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 blah. And then you push play and like the timer starts to, you have like a minute and a half and people are looking at that and they're looking at themselves and they start to freak out, right? And it's really difficult to be able to go and actually do those. And so I think it really behooves us if we go out and say, hey, we're going to force each other to take these virtual interviews. And then when you actually are looking at a virtual interview or you're performing a live virtual interview with a candidate, you just tend to really understand much more about what's really going on there and how difficult that is to actually do. If I'm sitting in a conference room with you and I'm having an interview with you face to face, I'm not distracted by all of the stuff that's going on around me, right? Because I have this live person right there. We're making eye contact. I'm seeing body and visual cues. If I'm on video with you and all of a sudden the doorbell's ringing or I see my kid run across the front yard with a burning torch or, we just have so much other stuff going around or even bad connections or I can't hear real great or whatever that might be. It's just very difficult. So we tend to want to go out with the candidates as well. So if you're in a position where you're setting up an interview for a candidate, to really coach them a little bit, right? Talk to them about, hey, great lighting, set the scene behind you. You guys can see me. I have a couple of different photos, some Tim's network, a Prince quote. More than likely in an interview, someone's going to ask, they're like, oh my gosh, I love that Prince quote. That's so cool. And it's going to instantly, we're going to have some dialogue about that. Or if you saw that I had in my background had like a pot bong, guess what? That's going to come up. And maybe probably not going to come up, but it's going to come up in the conversation after the interview, right? Where they're going to go, we're not hiring that dude. Or like all kinds of other stuff, right? We don't tend to look at that environment around us or understand the importance of lighting and audio from that. Also, like really from an energy standpoint, if I'm in front of you and I'm answering a question or I'm thinking for a couple of seconds about something, it doesn't even register that that's like a blip. But if you're on video and that happens, all of a sudden you're like, this person's low energy. This person's this. We hear more low energy comments from hiring managers within video interview than we ever did with in-person interview. So again, it's a difficult thing for people to really kind of understand. So make sure we're going out there. And then we tell people too, if you're researching and they go, I checked the website, that's my research. No longer on a virtual interview is that going to fly. It probably wouldn't fly in a personal interview either. We have to do more than that. But what we're trying to do is make sure that that great person we see on paper is coming across as well as they can in person as well. If you truly want a really great inclusive work environment or a workforce, we need to make sure that we're coaching all the people to be the best of who they can be. One of the best ways to increase the talent of what we have is to make referrals easy. And when I say no easier, because we think we make it easy. Like, oh, Tim, all I have to do is fill out this form and send it in with, a blood sample, and then we'll take that, that referral. We have to figure out a way to make this so easy that it's literally it's idiot proof and it's a button. And that's what all this RollPoint, Teamable, CoMeet, Telemetry, Simpler, they all do that. And what I love about these is not only does it make referrals easy, it actually it makes it super easy. Think about how it makes it viral. So if we have a position open and we go, gosh, you know what, we'd really, for this position, would love a woman. We need more women on this team. We could actually just send those referrals to women because statistically women are more likely to refer more women. And we can make things like that happen. I want to get more Black engineers on this team. Let's send it out to all of our Black engineers because they're more likely to have a network of other Black engineers that they know. We can really work to diversify our teams in the way that we want and shape them correctly. This technology could always do this, but when it first came out, they kind of behind the scenes were really nervous about this because their thing was like, what if organizations use this for evil? What if they, I'm a white dude, and what if I just sent this out to all the white dudes because I want more white dudes? And you're like, yeah, you know what? That's a potential. But if you actually make a dashboard where it shows what you're trying to do and what the data shows and how this was sent and who it was sent, we think companies will use it for good more than evil. And I think a lot of these technologies do that, where it allows you to go out there and make great hires. When I talk to every organization, they'll say, hey, basically highest ROI and recruiting is always going to be referrals. There's probably best actual quality of hire is coming from a referral. They're the longest tenure is coming from a referral. And so we go, how do we get more referrals? And, and so using a technology like this definitely works. And again, from a remote standpoint, when you're not in front of your employee base all the time, having a technology that easily allows them to share the job with their social networks is really the best way to do all of this. Virtual onboarding, and then I have some time for questions. If we think about virtual onboarding, all of these work really well. We use DocuSign, but also we started using Teams a lot, Zoom a lot. One of the things that we have to really think about though is how do you build kind of an onboarding content calendar? So think of day one, not of when they start, but when they start to onboard. So usually that is the day they accept the offer is the timeline of when that content calendar needs to start. Like, hey, I'm the hiring manager. I made the offer. The person accepted. They're going to start in 2 weeks. Okay, from right now to not just the day they start, but probably 90 days after they start, maybe a year. Organizations do different things. How are we going to ensure they're getting all the content that makes them feel like, one, they're welcomed, that they made the right choice in their career, that they continue to make the right choice in their career, and all of those great things. So think about that. We love to integrate short range video. So if I have a person that accepted a job and they're like, the hiring manager's like, hey, we made them the offer, or HR made them the offer and they signed the offer letter and they sent it back. The next thing I wanted to go is having like a 90-second video from that hiring manager to go out to them that says, oh my gosh, I just heard that you accepted. I'm so excited to get you on the team. Here's what we're going to do when you get in, blah, 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 whatever. Maybe it's from one of the people they're going to be a coworker with that maybe was on the interview team with them, right? Like, hey, Mary, the boss just told me that you accepted the job. I can't wait to get you on. We have this project that's going to start in 2 months. It's going to be the coolest thing. Let me know. First day, don't plan on lunch. You and I are going to go take lunch together, right? Whatever that might be. Virtually, that would be difficult, I guess. Well, you could have a virtual lunch. Use social, right? Think about virtual onboarding. And let's say somebody, one of the people that you hired was on Instagram, and you have your own organizational Instagram account. You could easily go out and say, oh my gosh, we're so excited. We just hired the best accountant in the entire world, Mary, at Mary, whatever. And we can't wait to have her start with us. Super excited, right? Bam, goes out. Because think about how that interacts, especially on a younger, workforce on social, and how they love that. We want to be able to make it mobile, especially if you're hiring hourly workers. 85 to 90% of hourly workers will only ever have access to the internet via a smart device. They don't have a computer at home. They don't have a device at home so all of your onboarding has to be mobile, right? If you want them to virtually sign up for insurance or for payroll or whatever that might be. Again, multi-channel comms is not just email, right? Can we send a text message that sends a link that gets them into our payroll system and starts to work that? I always say make your first shot count. Again, going back to like sending out a short range video or just sending a text message and telling people how excited you are. You want them to make them feel like they are just made the best choice of their life and their career in terms of that virtual onboarding. I will tell you the one thing that we've seen since January to current is virtual values and culture is super hard to communicate. Now we tend to use Teams in our environment, and I think a lot of organizations are using Teams or Slack that allows your hiring manager and your smaller teams to actually interact on a virtual way to continue to try to figure out what does that culture look like when we're remote, but also continue to make sure you have those water cooler conversations, those little things. As a leader, I will constantly go out and maybe I'll share a story of something, whatever that might be, just to get the team to interact in a more kind of social way remotely, knowing that most of what we do remotely is going to be work. So we have to figure out a way to get those values and culture out in a really good way. Okay, so I have some time for questions. I got about 9 minutes. Also, I told people I have a diversity ebook that I put together for diversity recruiting. So you can get that right here. So it's 5 tips to strengthen your organization's diversity requirement. Super simple. Go to gettalk.at/diversity. You just put your email in, you'll rate me, and instantly you'll get a link sent to the PDF of that ebook. I actually wrote that book, The Talent Fix. It's right here. You can go to Amazon, buy that. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you have questions that you don't feel comfortable asking here, would love to be able to talk to you guys and answer those questions and help you out. I know a lot of times public versus private tends to be a lot of the questions. Like, Tim, here's where we're at. I can't do that, in a private setting or a public setting the way they do in private. How do I do that here? Send me a message. We'll figure that out. All right, let's go into the question thing. So don't referrals work against diversity, from Mary Laura Hammond. Mary, you're right. That traditionally, right, referrals do work against diversity and inclusion unless, like we said, we're asking a diverse and inclusive audience for referrals. And so I think that's where that falls down. If you're in an organization that's 90% white and you're trying to get more color, or 90% male and you're trying to get more female, we have to stop asking the white dudes for referrals and start asking other people for referrals. By the way, there's nothing illegal about doing that. There's nothing illegal that says, hey, Tim, you didn't ask us white dudes for referrals. You're only asking the females for referrals. What's up with that? Well, let me explain it. We have an organizational directive, right, that we want to be more inclusive and we need to increase our gender representation. So we're going out and asking females. By the way, females might refer a white dude. But again, we think overall referrals are still good. We want to get them. It doesn't mean that we have to hire every referral. We don't hire every referral, but it gets us a good way to be able to do that. It's a great question, Mary, because that one comes up a lot. What else? I was hoping that would have some. Throw it in here right now if you have it, because I would love some more questions. I'm going to try to go back because it's hard for me to do the 2 screens and figure out how to do that. Somebody had something on here about just added text us option for job seekers to contact us. Text us is a good one, Margot, as well. Like I said, there's a lot of free ones or cheaper ones out there. In the chat, if you want to add in any texting, that would be great. Luann, if you're there, I don't know if you had a chance to take a look and keep your eye on the chat, or if there's any Q&A out there that I can answer.
I am here, Tim. I would like to hear a little bit more about when you talked about the culture. When we're all of a sudden, my team is remote, right? And we found that we were grinding. In fact, I had to buy myself an Apple Watch that would tell me stand up,
Stand up.
right?
Yeah.
And
Move.
one of the things, yeah, move. One of the things that we're doing is we're trying to make it so that we have, because it's Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting. And so we're doing 15 minutes ahead of a meeting has to be white space, and 30
Yep.
minutes after a meeting has to be white space to prepare for the meeting and to follow up. But we are, that culture. I've hired 3 people in this COVID environment virtually. And can you talk a little bit more about how you keep that closeness of a team in this virtual environment and how you connect? I think you did some great just challenging us to say the onboarding, the virtual onboarding, what is that going to look like? But can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that we found is early on in the pandemic, organizations really put a lot of time and effort into how do we maintain that like how do we'll do we're going to do a virtual happy hour, right? Or we're going to do our leader's going to do a Monday kind of state of the world, talk or whatever, kind of and so we got really good, but then all of a sudden you're like 3 months into it and you're like, yeah, that doesn't really matter anymore. We don't really have to do that. No one's really engaging, and let's stop. And I'm like, no. That's the worst thing to do, is to just stop. So we want to continue on trying to do that. I will tell you, when I take a look at organizations all over, they're doing some of the things they're doing are like a virtual water cooler Zoom room that's open either a certain time frame where you just open it, people will stop in and out. A lot of organizations are doing it from like 8 to 5 where it's just open and people will come in there. It's almost like when you walk down to the break room to get a cup of coffee and you would see a couple people from other departments and stuff or whatever, and you'd have little kind of short conversations. They're doing the same thing virtually on a Zoom and they just keep it open all day. People will pop in and out. No one has to be there. It's just open and you can do it. We also see it where I think it's my kids play this game and it's an inappropriate game. They're not inappropriate, but the game itself can be inappropriate. It's called Jackbox. But what it is a game where online you can actually play with a number of people like on your team, where it's almost like a Mad Libs, where somebody would put up a statement and then everybody would throw in like whatever they thought the fill-in would be. And then you, as the person who put up the statement, has to pick the one that that you feel is like the best one. And then they get points if you choose their statement, right? So there's games like that you can play. And that one you could do throughout the day, right? You throw it out there at 9 a.m., tell people to respond by 10 a.m., and then you're going to give whoever you think, gave you the right answer with the answer. Now, again, we want to make it work appropriate, but there's games like that are out there. But again, for me, it's all about the cadence and our workforce. When they're sitting at home and you're not doing anything with them, they assume they're missing out. So we have to make sure we do. Again, I get back to the content calendar and almost going on my Outlook calendar. There's certain times that I have on my week, and it might be Wednesday morning and then Friday afternoon, that I just force myself as a leader to throw something out there to my team and engage them in a way that says, hey, I'm thinking about you, I'm thinking about us, and how do we continue to kind of keep this culture in this going, whether that's an update of something that we're doing or something like that. So I know I saw Ashley put on there, any tips in finding or following internal pathways for organizational growth? Internal mobility is huge right now. You have companies like Workday and Oracle and SAP, some of the bigger HRM companies that are consistently putting in time and money and effort into figuring out how do we make sure internal mobility doesn't go away. I will tell you one of the things too, like Google just came out last week and they said they're putting a pause on their performance reviews. Because if you think about what's happening right now, for the most part, women with children are impacted more than men when it comes to having the dual role of, I have a remote teaching role, I have a work role, I have all these different roles. And so more than likely their performance would be lower than somebody that didn't have those same kind of expectations. So organizations are having to really think now, like maybe we should just pause performance, let people get through this kind of once in a lifetime issue, and then we'll come back when people are normal in normal performance environment and then start measuring. The problem is like Ashley just asked, well, wait a minute, if I'm young and I'm upward mobility and I'm trying to move fast, I don't want that to happen. So we have a lot of competing interest in our same workforce that we have to try to figure out. I don't have the perfect answer. I will say I think it's unfair to continue performance reviews when we know all the data shows us that for the most part, women are more impacted than men right now when it comes to having to take on more responsibility, especially with childcare and teaching and some of that stuff. What else?
I want to
1 minute.
thank you. We're at the 2 o'clock
Yeah.
hour, and clearly
Yeah.
we could talk more. I think I'm going to have to get a hold of Kim, my director of training, and maybe we can follow up at some point. We're looking at some
Sure.
great practice sharing or something else that we can pull you in. Clearly there's demand and there's a high need for this. So I want to thank you so much for sharing your resources. Thank everybody for coming in to this workshop. The stuff you can find on our website. Obviously, Tim's got his contact information, and if you need anything, you can always come to the association. And I think we're going to just say thank you to Tim, thank you to everybody, and we will be right back at our conference at 9 a.m. in the morning.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have fun.
Thank you so much. All right, take care, everybody.